Hey, we're live. Welcome to the show. My name's Steve Jaguar.
And I'm his co-host, Mike Foster.
All right, in this show, a video newsletter for your impatient world of all things cloud native, security, Kubernetes, tools, money, and things that make you say WTF.
Yeah, a lot of WTF things this week. Also, we're going to kick it off with Andy Martin. So it's a great show. I just want to get into it. Welcome.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's drag him kicking and screaming into the theater because we originally said we were going to have him at 4:30, but we realized he's playing hooky from a corporate event.
Yeah, with my esteemed team, I hasten to add. So it's all perfectly legitimized. Yeah, very pleased to be here. Hello, gentlemen.
All right, thanks, Andy. So for those of you who don't know who Andy Martin is, he is prolific in the world of Kubernetes security. He is the founder of, co-founder of Control Plane. He can introduce himself further, but he's got all sorts of stuff going on. That's what I wanted to talk to him about. How close was my intro, Andy? Reasonable?
Yeah. It was the mark was broadly hit. Yeah, I'm. There's little else to add. Yeah, straight out of the park.
All right, excellent. So last night, Andy and I were talking, and I was curious. He was going to KubeCon. For those of you who don't know, it's very difficult for people in Britain to go to America, probably because we created the Delta version of the virus. So it's one of our claims to fame. And then you said you were going, and I was like, "What? How have you cracked this code?" So I want to ask you about that. And then, of course, I know why you're going, so I want to ask you about that. So please tell me, how on earth are you getting to America?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I have the wisdom of the masses to thank, and as always, my dear mother, who told me, "Oh, well, one of my friends got in for a haberdashery show of some description." Really? How does that work? So, the legislation or the presidential edict is such that one can't travel into the US from the Schengen area, which is the European free trade and travel zone. I think there's a few more places, China, of course, maybe South Africa. So if you're in these countries in the 15-day period prior to entering the US, it is a hard no. However, courtesy of Reddit, of course, the US travel ban subreddit details people who've used various different international doglegs through different parts of the world in order to get into the US. So you can't travel across the land borders, north and south. I should probably caveat, I haven't done this yet. This is very much the power of naive enthusiasm washing over me. But yeah, the ambition is basically to spend 2 weeks outside of Europe, and that includes some lovely places. I mean, the Maldives are outside of Europe, so I hear. And yeah, and then sort of just popping across. I'll feed back as to whether or not this was a successful escapade in approximately 2 weeks' time. But yeah, that's my ambition, and I'm just so desperate to go and reconnect with awesome colleagues and peers and friends at KubeCon that essentially no presidential edict could stop me. Although it remains to be seen.
Well, in theory.
Precisely.
Amazing. So are you going to be doing, and this is the next part, was a Capture the Flag part 3, I guess it is. Is that third time?
I think so. Yeah, it must be.
Cool.
Yeah, we're very lucky in that we've done loads of work with tag security over the years. It's an amazing group of people. It's just it's like the true essence of open source security collaboration. People build white papers. All you have to do is throw your hat into the ring and sort of throw some contributions in, and everyone's happy to review and have conversations and sort of discuss the sometimes more philosophical elements of, especially like the supply chain security white paper that they built out last year. So I love working with that group. It's super open. If anybody is interested, you can just rock up to a meeting. And yeah, as a group, we were always trying to get a Capture the Flag into KubeCon for the past kind of I guess 3 or so years. But there's a lot of preparation and planning. And eventually we kind of cobbled together a community group. And yeah, so from there we now we now do a CTF. This year is going to be extra special. We will obviously we're in LA, so the entire capture the flag is Hollywood themed. Each scenario
nice.
relates to a film, and what can I say without spoiling it? Let's just say there's a red pill, blue pill, or the ones that do will have the side channel to completion. There is a red pill, blue pill escapade.
Nice.
So the capture the flag will fork once you've done a couple of scenarios, then you can choose your own adventure, and there's a lot of Easter eggs in. And yeah, I really have to just shout out Tag Security, because the quality of memes and ridiculous and amusing suggestions that have come out of the group should mean that we're in for a little bit of a fun ride for this particular CTF.
So for the poor people like us, or me at least, who will still be remote, is there an advantage to being present? Because this will be the first time you've got hybrid going on, or at least some live.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really strong point. I mean, we've had this problem with training delivery as well, because the SANS CEC 584 course, we've only delivered that over the past sort of 18 months, purely virtual. And you lose some elements of interpersonality. There's definitely something about showing a keyboard and kind of seeing how the thought process somebody goes through in order to actually solve a problem. So the CTFs that we've done have also all been sort of COVID ridden, I was going to say, in COVID times, probably a more polite way of saying it. And certainly one does lose that interpersonal element. It's more difficult to give insightful feedback, I would say, from a distance. Just back off towards the wharf. And so the hybrid element, if people are in person, then they will be able to essentially throw their hands up and flip their keyboards. You know, there's kind of the red flags of concern. Yeah. And then we can sort of step in. But we're really focused on making sure that it's the same kind of remote first meeting ethic, that people have the same experience remotely as in person. So we have scripts, we have a specific set of hints to get people through. So people have the same commonality of experience no matter where they are, but they can shout louder if they're in person. That's probably the tie-up.
And the last KubeCon, there was a whole Slack channel, basically as part of like the security day and all that was devoted towards helping people with the CTF. So I just remember coming back and there would be like 100 messages that I missed in the span of 1 hour about it. So yeah, even if you're online, there was always somebody that was willing to talk you through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And shout out to Lewis for leading a lot of that charge as well. Obviously, Lewis and I do a lot of training together, and really the focus is on making sure that people have that same opportunity of experience. And I suppose that the one thing that you miss in person is the ad hoc application of GIFs, of which the aforementioned man is master. So maybe there's some advantage to being remote after all.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Awesome. Andy, I only said I was going to get you here for 10 minutes. The last thing.
Absolutely no problem. Yep, sure.
Last thing, because I'm watching the time. Do you mind? You have a book coming out. Are you allowed to talk about it?
I am permitted to talk about it, yes. Thank you very much for reminding me. To some extent, had I understood what I was entering into at the commencement of the opportunity, I may not have got in with such ebullience. The book is now finished. So my fastidious and well-read and well-authored co-author, Michael Hassenblass, and I have written a book called Hacking Kubernetes. It is now available on pre-order on Amazon, which was astounding to me. The thing is verging on tangibility. It will be out at the end of November, and it's a threat-driven guide to defending Kubernetes through an attacker's mindset. So we paint the picture of the archetypal 8-bit adversary, the dread pirate Captain Hashjack, who is interested in locking your clusters up and mining his coins and other nefarious and dastardly behaviors. And we step through the components that make up a Kubernetes system. We start really low, and we look at the pod concept and why it makes sense, where the inherent trust boundaries are with namespace sharing. We look at the container. Ultimately, the security context is just Linux under the hood, so we kind of go all the way down into virtual file systems and look at why container breakouts often exploit assumptions in the way that things were traditionally put together, and then containers obviously formed, or namespaces formed a new kind of cross-cutting set of layers, and then where those, I feel like there's too much spiel already, but yeah, so going deep into those things, and everywhere from there through networking into policy and admission control, and finishing off by looking at organizations and actually considering, well, cluster is just one part of a whole, and a holistic security perhaps. So absolutely thrilled to be at the end of the journey, and ready to start throwing it from the window of a car somewhere.
Awesome. Congrats. Looks like you're already beating us to the celebration a little bit. So yeah, we have to check out that pre-order on Amazon.
Somewhere. Yeah,
exactly.
All right. Michael, I kind of dominated all this. Do you have any questions, or can we let him get back to his beer?
No, I feel bad. I gotta let him get back to that beer. It's looking a little lonely right now. So thank you,
much
Andy.
appreciated.
All right.
Yeah, lovely
Andy.
to see you, gentlemen. Thank you for having me.
Good luck.
Take care.
All right. Bong. Oh, remove him.
We can kick him out.
You kick him out.
There you go.
There we go.
I got rid of him. Yeah. Comes on. Now I'm just getting jealous. He's drinking on the show. What is it? Come on.
I know. What is it like, right? We're in England, so for him, it's still early.
Yeah. But yeah, great start to the show. Now we got to get into some general news first.
All right.
Let's
crack on.
Great show for you.
We didn't discuss what we're doing, actually, the topics, did we?
No, we kicked off with Andy, but yeah, so we're talking Pegasus spyware, we're talking CoPilot and some of the risk assessment, a little bit about Terraform and its open source project and how swamped it is, as well as some crazy disgruntled employees in the WTF section and a big unicorn at a ridiculous valuation. And then we're ending it off with Steve. You're doing the demo today. What are you demoing?
So I think we discussed a few weeks back the NSA hardening guidance that came out. That was kind of like a governmental version of the CIS benchmark for Kubernetes, which looked really good. We'll remind you about what that is. And then we will show you, almost like instantly, someone came up with a Kubenchy kind of tool called Kubescape that executes these pedantic benchmark checks in an automated way, which everyone loves. Anything that can defeat anything. Pedancy, what's that word? Anyway.
Yeah, it counts.
Cure our pain.
All right. Let's just get into it. Takeaways
from this is your edition. So what did you get out of this?
Yeah, so just in general, I think it was an interesting story. It's a little bit older, but there have been kind of a resurgence of articles coming out about Pegasus, how it was developed, what it was used for. It was developed by a private company in Israel and sold to governments, and it was a backdoor into iPhones. And it wasn't in this article, but it was another article that I was reading about it. It was very interesting because we talk about mobile phones, and mobile phones, let's just say in America and the West, a lot of people have desktops and Macs, but mobile phones are massive in other places in the world where you don't necessarily have the money to have a desktop computer. And so mobile phones sort of are this perfect mix of opportunity and let's say
scale.
Scale. And also just people who are introduced to technology that aren't necessarily aware of how to use it. So Pegasus was used. There was a couple of different ways. Mostly it was through iMessage if you were using Apple or Mac or iOS, and it could be sent through WhatsApp. And all it was a link, and you clicked it, and it was routed into your phone. And it only became popular when somebody actually caught that it had been used. But up until then, there had been over 50,000 people that had been targeted. And by the way, this is a private company that sold this to governments and malicious actors who then used it. Right. So it's
we covered it.
I think we
covered
did
it on an earlier show. Yeah.
but it was just very interesting to see that it is still being used, and there are tools out there at the bottom, which is one of the main reasons why I wanted to bring it up. There is a tool to check your device if you have been hacked. Now, one of the biggest things that they talk about is this really was targeted towards, let's say foreign diplomats or people who governments want to go after. So if you're like us, nobody really wants to spy on us right now. Hopefully, I think you're okay. Yeah. Final words.
So I actually looked at this. I thought there's a tool time. Let's do the mobile verification toolkit. And then I gave up on it because it's basically a great way to brick your phone as well as checking to see if you've been hacked. I do have a spare phone over here that is pre-bricked, so I might actually, for fun, play with this. I think I've got it here. Yeah, it's got a whole bunch of instructions to install this. I mean, the instructions for checking if your phone have this, like, they themselves look dangerous. You have to be really concerned because you're essentially taking an iTunes backup or doing an independent library backup with this lib mobile device, which could be a great way to install Pegasus, is to tell people, oh, are you worried about Pegasus? Well, here's a tool that will check and tell you're clean. But what this does is install Pegasus. It would be brilliant.
It's pretty funny. So, Michael Mann in our group chat, the Darknet Diaries on their 100th episode did a talk specifically on Pegasus. So if you want to check out something more in depth, recommend looking at that. But I also found it funny because this came up on my phone and I'm like, do I click this now? This is Michael Mann just sending me a link, some random link about Pegasus. Anyways, it's really just interesting how all this stuff spreads, and keep your phones updated. Beware.
All right. Yeah, good one. All right, let's push on through with our next one. I'm gonna jump right here.
Mm-hmm.
This is great.
So for anybody who missed it, Steve did a demo on GitHub CoPilot. I'm going to snip it and put it up after the show so you can check it out if you missed it. And we had thought about that there were some issues with it. A lot of it being, what code is it being trained on? Is it private? Is it public? Are there going to be keys that are going to be involved? And now we see some risk assessments of GitHub CoPilot, and there are some issues.
A lot. And some of my favorite ones are near the bottom, but it was saying like non-determinism. Like it generated this. I don't know who's writing code to determine moon phases, but somehow he just wrote. All he wrote was that's indicated in the instructions there. Mm-hmm. So it's not like he even started it. I mean, make it bigger, and it went blap, and then he opened a new file and did it again. And it did that. And he was like, oh, why did I get different time? And both are wrong. He checked them. It's like, they're both wrong. So they obviously pulled it out of the GitHub archives, 2 wrong versions of how to do the moon phase. And then he did Easter. Easter is actually correct. So that's cool. He starts talking about keys and other secrets. And he links down here. He makes a reference to this, somebody doing CoPilot who just typed password equals over and over again. And these are some of the autofills. I got.
Oh no.
And he is pretty clear about it, right? He is saying, yeah, these are probably just it's pulling these passwords out of placeholders.
Yeah.
Like they're not real, right?
Yeah. And if you're any coder and you're looking at that, you should be able to see that is not best practice, right?
No. Yeah, exactly. I found this one particularly fascinating, coming from my, I guess called Black Duck days. License washing. Essentially, it's giving you segments of code without any regard for whether it's GPL, MIT.
That's a good point.
Could be really bad. So if you're and what's funny, because Black Duck used to scan, or still does, when I talk about it, they didn't take features away. scanned for snippets. So if the piece of code was unique enough that it was in, and it's in an open source repo, and it like CoPilot, Black Duck uses open source repos, which have restrictive licenses or overly permissive licenses like GPL, and it scans your private code to see if you've used open source beyond a certain piece, and that means that entails an entire function that constitutes legal grounds for it being a problem, and you having to release everything you've done commercially as open source as a result of using GPL code. And this could just happen now.
Yeah,
dangerous if you're writing if you're not writing up more open source and you're writing commercial code, beware of CoPilot.
CoPilot seems like the best use cases for beginners who want to learn structure, who want to see how it's done, right? Like let's say you're going through top 100 Python questions for interviews or something like that, and you're going through it and it auto-generates stuff. It's like, oh, that's an interesting way to do it. That's an interesting way to do it. You can learn from example, and then you can go and write a different way. But for production code or anything at a job, I'd question it. I'd almost feel like it would be cool if you could have some sort of AI for yourself. Like if you had CoPilot that only trained on your code, what would happen?
Oh yeah. Interesting. That would be fascinating. Actually, it would replicate style as well.
Mm-hmm.
There was a good one. Like, no, this is just a terrible example of. This is a super old school example of SQL injection, just setting yourself up by not really doing, like, assembling queries from strings. Even the most remedial scanner of code would tell you you don't do this anymore. This isn't how you do things. But the fact is, the wrong version, in particular to do with security of any kind, vastly outnumbers the correct version in GitHub. So it's going to show up. And in fact, there's an example here. He actually comes up with some numbers later on where he's talking about how if something is there 100 times, it was another one of the ones above where he kept getting the same key fed to him, and then he searched, because you could search GitHub, right? And he found it was associated with a course that had been forked like 1,000 times, and because it was an example key, that's the one it kept spitting out. So CoPilot is very much spitting out the lowest common denominator of quality, and so that's what you're getting. Like, whatever the worst, most popular thing is, it tends to be some of the examples. This one made me laugh a lot because, like, in my C days, like this, he's looping through a buffer of size 1024, and in the very end, whacking a null on what is the end of the buffer. This is like bad C code 101. He's basically whacking a null out of bounds, and that's just, like, in a Linux world, that's just going to crash and core dump. So, yeah, good article. And then you added this one. That's a bad number.
Yeah, and it's a pretty succinct article. If you scroll down, it basically just talks about how there are just issues with it, and it's not necessarily that a single piece of code is wrong, but when you put them together and you try to add functions together, it really does not hold up. So they found that 40% of them were vulnerable for 1,692 programs generated.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And vulnerable is also somewhat subjective for a lot of things. There are certain things that aren't vulnerable by themselves, but vulnerable when introduced in a specific scenario, right?
That's true. And if I were to pick on stats, why not? If you got, I don't know, 500 coders, put them in a room and said, make 1,692 programs.
Yeah.
What percentage would be vulnerable?
Mm-hmm.
Would it be more or less?
Yeah.
That's a number that sounds bad, but it might actually be better than reality.
Or maybe it mimics it completely because of the code that's been up is all
That's
based off
exactly
code,
right.
right? So yeah, too funny.
Yeah, that's fun. That is good. Yeah, so there you go. That was a follow-up. Was there anything else in that article? I just made it go away.
it was a lot of the things that we had repeated, honestly. So it wasn't
Okay.
too.
The one last thing. Let's just these points actually are Cobalt Speaker on 3 dimensions: diversity of domain, diversity of weakness, diversity of prompt. So that's a pretty good summary of how it works, but it doesn't mean it's not garbage in, garbage out.
Mm-hmm. It's up to you to filter through and figure out what to keep and what not to keep. So still need a coder reading it.
Still need humans. Oh,
we're not gone yet.
Yeah. All right. Let's plow through. I feel like less time constrained now that we've got Andy out of the way, because I thought he was going to come right on half the hour. This one I added, and which was kind of alarming because I do a lot of work now with Terraform and HashiCorp.
If we click the image, you can read their release. But this is we were talking about open source and licensing and all that earlier. This is a common issue with open source projects, right? Due to low staffing, Terraform core team at HashiCorp, we're not routinely reviewing and merging community submitted pull requests. We do hope to begin processing them again soon once we're back up to full staffing again. For the moment, we'd ask for your patience. Thanks. And there was, I also posted a link after because I guess this wasn't a sufficient press release. And so the Terraform team wrote up a very succinct document about how they appreciate everybody that's contributing. Terraform seeing immense growth, especially because they just released 1.0, but they need to make sure that their engineering capabilities internally are taken care of first. And honestly, I think this is all you can really expect from an open source project is to be thorough and say, hey, like you can contribute. It might not be added right away. And I think there's a couple different types of open source. There's open source, which is a company decides to open source their code and allow contributions. And the project is managed by an open source team and isn't owned by a company, right?
Right.
That is different. CNCF, who takes ownership of Kubernetes, has a bunch of different contributors. But again, they have limitations on the engineers that they can pick because people are donating their time. So if a private company is staffed with an engineering team, and honestly, I'm sure there's a ton of people who want to provide functionality to Terraform, they still have a product roadmap of things that they need to get done. And they're not really. That's the other thing too, is if they were at the whim of open source community, they wouldn't be making money. It's like, you gotta, to a certain extent, the community is there for you to use and learn and grow, and they still have to take care of their customers with the features that they need, right? So it's a tough balance.
Oh yeah. It's funny. I don't know if this is. I do wonder sometimes if people misinterpret open source as like, now I'm part of the team. Like, just it's hard enough to be accepted as a contributor without working at, say, let's just use HashiCorp as an example. But it's like at no point I don't know, like it's not like that at Bridge Crew. Like at Bridge Crew, we have all slew of open source products, and obviously Red Hat entirely open source. But like, there's not a lot of people solely dedicated to reviewing community contributions here, like we do. But it's like, as you said, if we reviewed, like I wouldn't even say it's 50-50. That's not very useful. Oh, that's really useful. It's because let's say the engineering team is 10 people. Well, the community is about 10,000 people. So they're not all going to, it's unrealistic to expect until you rise to the top of that contributor list, right? Where everything you do is such quality, they probably will hire you, that you're just going to get a reaction like that. So I thought it was a good response, what they said. And I think that response, you could cut and paste that to any open source company's blog and go, yeah, what they said, same here.
Yeah, and I do feel bad for people who put their time aside to go and create code that they thought was going to be accepted. downstream into the product. The one thing that I would caution anybody who wants to contribute to an open source community is get involved in the community first, because most likely they have some sort of quarterly review or they talk about features and functionality. There is such a thing as a bloated product, and not everything will be used. So just because you have this very minute use case, you might be the only person using this. So go and figure out if other people have it before you go and create and over engineer for something. Because the other thing too is you might go and create code for this minute use case that they've already solved in a different way, and maybe you have the wrong pattern or the wrong application. So yeah, just get involved in the community and save yourself some time with a couple meetings, I think.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah,
that's funny. That last one you said that was the first thing that happened to Bridge Crew. I saw a problem, proudly submitted my my version of the fix, which then just completely got denied. And then I was like, what? That fixed it. And then they fixed it themselves because they were already doing it, and it was much better. So it was so yeah, super easy for that to happen. All right, that was good. This is yours.
Yeah, we have our last quick thing that we wanted to mention. It is the Steve, I can't see the screen. Did you bring it up? Oh, there it goes. Just took a while. Yeah, so the Kubernetes instance calculator. I'm going to go through and do a quick tool time demo of this next week and really flesh out in depth. If you're interested, the link is in the YouTube channel below. And again, leave a comment, subscribe. We appreciate any shares as well while you're there. But yeah, really cool. I think it's very useful for Kubernetes, specifically because they have the pod requests and limits and the efficiency there. So a lot of it is also tweaking your application and your instance sizing. But again, we'll get into it next week. So check back next Thursday at 4 p.m. You know where to find us. Cool.
All right. Next section.
Yeah, it's not really a true.
Now, what starts with the letter C?
Before I cut myself off there, it's not really a true CVE. Yeah, a little quick on the click, but it. We mentioned this last week, the crazy hack, and ChaosDB and Wiz came out with a thorough explanation. So we wanted to share it with y'all so you could check it out and read actually how simple this was. And honestly, I've had to work with Juniper notebooks, and I've had issues with the setup and configuration as well. So I don't envy that team. There's a lot there.
Did you read this thoroughly enough to summarize? Because
yeah, but basically, like, they were using each Juniper notebook was sort of in a VM or container. I think they said it was a container, and Jupyter, it kind of works as a dashboard for visualizing your data. If anybody's ever used it or gone into any sort of data science, you'll be aware of Jupyter notebooks. And what was happening is you had a bunch of databases and a bunch of Juniper notebook instances, and those databases would just get mounted into the instances, and they were able to basically go into a single notebook, abuse the application, and elevate privileges to get across to all of them. And by getting across to all of them, they could go and just pull all the keys from all the notebooks. And because they had the keys, then they could access all of the databases and mount them all into a single instance if they wanted to. Now, I don't think they explicitly say how they jumped, but they said it was very trivial.
They did say we'll share it soon. So we'll follow up when that one comes out. Yeah.
Yes. If anybody's aware of Jupyter notebooks, a lot of it is you set up the instance and then it asks for the configuration of where you want to pull data from. That's what it's designed to do. And it looks like they missed something. Although Wiz also does say, and does give credit, the exploit was shut down within 48 hours of being reported. However, if you have a Jupyter Notebook instance on Azure, go and change your credentials for the database, because those keys are very specific to your ID, right? Like most JSON web tokens and things like that for cloud instances. You should go and change those, because if they had been accessed by an external actor, they still will have access. So, yeah, that's your update.
All right, awesome. All right. Oh, is that the last one?
That's the
Next
last one.
section.
Crazy stuff. Ready?
Yeah. All right. This is I'm gonna start with not the link that you posted, but just a reminder of what we're talking about. So this is I like Mashable. T-Mobile had a breach. I feel like we covered it on the show. Apologies if we did not. But that's big, right? 47.8 million people. Very, very bad. And then more recently, T-Mobile hacker reveals his name. Says company security is awful. He's not shy. I think he's a little stupid, but not shy.
21-year-old American.
That sounds stupid.
Although he does mention that he was, he says that he was kidnapped.
Well, what is going on there? This whole thing reads weird, which is why it's in this section of the show, right? Who steals nearly 50 million people's data? Brags in the Wall Street Journal, which we should bing. We'll do that in a second. And then down here says he told the paper he'd been kidnapped in Germany and held in some sort of pretend mental hospital. That was his motivation for talking about the T-Mobile hack, so that someone within the FBI leaks information about the hack. So this whole thing takes a wild Hollywood turn at the end with that. And then I have to subscribe to, I guess I can read the Wall Street Journal for free. Is that where he's being held in this? Well, that's T-Mobile. It very easily could have been the fake mental asylum.
Anyways, but yeah, so there's it kind of makes sense. If you get kidnapped and you get imprisoned, one of the ways would be go public, because it's harder to make you disappear or just pick you off the street like that. But regardless, if you're a T-Mobile customer, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2020 hacks, if we're following this pattern, we'll report on something soon.
2022 is just around the corner.
Check in for a new WTF about T-Mobile next week or the week after or sometime this year.
Yeah, just assume it's going to happen. We could probably predict it'll be season or version 2, season 13 probably. Version 13 probably be when we're talking about T-Mobile again. Okay, let me just poke one little hole in there. All right, so the last time I was kidnapped and being held in a German mock mental hospital, I found it very difficult to get interviewed by the Wall Street Journal, such that I could reveal the exploits of my hacking. What about you? When you were kidnapped, did you have free reign to talk to the newspapers?
No, but I didn't get in prison for hacking. So
that's right. Yeah, it's only when you've been kidnapped and put in a mental hospital for hacking to T-Mobile do they say, okay, but I really want to talk to the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah. How did he get released from this?
Then.
What happened?
I don't know.
I don't know. There's a lot going on here, but
it's a bit to unpack.
Regardless, we get to talk about it. So thank you for the story, 21-year-old.
Yeah, that was a proper WTF headline.
All right. There's another great one is disgruntled employee. So credit union employee nukes 21 gigabits of data and revenge, and actually confesses to the crime too, by the way. So if you read down this article, Juliana Burrell.
Okay.
Yeah, so this was, I think, a year or two ago. She got fired. They were supposed to revoke access. I guess they didn't. She was working remotely. Like most NFS drives, there was a P drive, and she just went and deleted the drive because she was feeling a little upset about her situation. Deleted over 21 gigabytes of data, of bank data. Now, luckily, even though one person fell asleep at the wheel on revoking permission, they had backup, so everything was okay. That being said, they still went after her, and she admitted to it in texts. So I think that's one of the rules. Just you commit a crime, probably don't write your confession down somewhere.
That's a little tip for the kids.
Yeah.
Don't write the damage you've done down. Otherwise, you might in the near future be referred to as the defendant.
Mhm. But it is interesting because as you go to the bottom of the article, and Steve, you and I have talked about this, that it isn't so much the tool, but who has access to the tool and what the impact is, right? Just because if it's Pegasus and the government has Pegasus, oh, the government's using it to go after bad actors. Okay, well, what happens if a government employee decides to snoop on their ex or something like that, right? I don't know what the controls that are put in place. I just have to assume that they know what they're doing and that they're ethical about it. But anyways, bad actors, disgruntled employees, the human element is always prevalent.
Yeah, one of the first.
Is that a poem?
I think there was a haiku.
Yeah, sure.
One of the first security talks I ever went to a while back. It was like the first question to the audience was, "What's the number one cybersecurity risk?" And people were like, "SQL injection," answering, and of course it was disgruntled employee. And it's like they're a born insider, and they're not happy with you. And in this case, because in America, like we have pretty awesome labor laws over here in Europe, but in America you can just fire someone, right? You don't even really need a reason.
Depends on the state, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't know them all, but I've certainly seen that. So that's not cool. Like there was a story here 6 years ago where I probably can't say who it is. I have to forget if I do, but there was a trading platform, let's say, who this was the information that was in the paper, didn't give one of their quants programmers the bonus that they thought they deserved. So like a quants people are like, they program in F# and they don't speak like normal humans. They're too smart because they're doing microtransactions. So the bonus that this quants programmer got, and this is another one for kids if you're looking for a career choice, was $500,000. That was the yearly bonus, like a banker level bonus for a programmer working in micro investment trading, right? They left disgruntled, stealing the algorithms that they had written because they thought should have been $1 million. That's how easy it is to create an insider threat. And so they got a USB drive, took all the code, left the moment they found out it wasn't enough, got on a plane, and the moment they landed, they were arrested because the company had awesome security. And as soon as they put the USB stick in, they were like, "Arrest him." That was like they almost got him out the door. It was like, so yeah, smart, but not that smart.
I was gonna say, it's,
true story though.
Crazy.
All right.
That should be an article in our WTF section. Nice one, Steve. You should write that one. Or can you?
I will. I don't know. Hey,
the next one isn't a WTF, more just a funny that came across, I think, Steve's chat, Reddit, somewhere.
It is. Oh, have I been bumped? There we go.
Yeah.
This was Google captures. God,
yeah.
I didn't even tools that use YAML, and without scrolling down, everyone's trying to answer it. Like all the responses to this tweet are people going, Kubernetes, Circle CI, Docker Swarm. It's even like a spot the logo competition.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out which ones, what is the answer. Yeah.
GitLab is the fox.
Jenkins.
Yeah.
Jenkins. Well, it's like, and so you have to know them, and you have to know the
Ansible.
Whether they use YAML.
I think AWS CloudFormation does too. Do a lot. I think most of these do. Which ones don't is probably the better question.
It's
KubeADM. I think you still use a configuration file.
Well, is CloudFormation YAML?
All right, now we're going down the rabbit hole. Somebody, let's just copy the answers.
All right. Yeah,
somebody tell us what we got wrong.
All right, next section.
Yeah, this is the last crazy one that we snuck in there. I updated the link, Steve. I'm not sure if you have it, but with everything going remote, there is a crazy amount of calls, Zoom calls, Google Meet calls, anything like that. So, I mean, I can get the link if you want.
Did you update it to Bloomberg?
Yeah. Well, BNN Bloomberg. Because it's on Bloomberg, but, subscription and all that. So, but anyways, so they interviewed a bunch of leaders, CEOs, and they said, how many of you have had to fire somebody over a Zoom mishap? And
Really?
over a quarter have said that they had to. And so this is just in general how they've handled meetings. So there's a lot like move responsibilities. Some people don't know how to schedule meetings. And then what they've had to do, informal reprimands, formal reprimands, remove staff from project, staff are fired. I'm kind of curious. I think like we've had some pretty good companies with how they've handled Zoom meetings and everybody's pretty professional. So I haven't run into an issue like this yet. But I can see customer facing meetings being probably the number one thing you get reprimanded for, right? Just not looking professional.
Yeah.
Come in late. Like things like that you can easily get reprimanded for.
Yeah, I'm just amazed. Virtual meeting miscues.
Yeah. And 1 in 4 have had to fire a staffer. I think that was the big number.
How do you go through the informal, formal, removed? Because that's all going to happen before you get fired. Unless, of course, you're in certain states in America. And
most of the time, people aren't going to do that because the hassle of going to hire somebody is a tough process, right? People don't just get fired at the drop of the hat, right? A lot of it is multiple behavioral issues because you got hired. And so nobody wants to look, no manager also wants to look like an idiot for hiring somebody that they have to fire a month later.
Right. That's weird. That's bonkers. I do see some pretty bizarre behavior in Zoom meetings versus live meetings. Like you learn about people in these meetings that you didn't know before. But yeah,
that's true.
Wild.
Yeah, I guess no different from an office. You learn a lot.
True. All right.
Okay. Wow. We have a big unicorn coming up. Yes. Databricks.
The daily. This was not long ago. But I just we have asked ourselves on this show, how many series are there?
Yeah.
Like
are there
H?
What happens when you get to Z?
I don't know. What would the investment be at that?
A1?
It would be
like alpha, beta, yeah, exactly. But for those who are unaware, Databricks, Apache Spark, Hadoop, Apache Mesos do a lot of data processing scale. They've been around for, I want to say 10 years, at least, right?
Databricks. Yeah, I think it's almost exactly 10 years.
Yeah,
we were talking. Go ahead.
Oh, it's just they've been around for a long time. They have a lot of different products, and they focus a lot on data engineering, as the title would say. 38 billion though is an insane evaluation.
Yeah, I've never seen a series that far down. But then again, we kind of live in crazy startup tech. Security land,
and the data scene is getting pretty hot, specifically because of all the data coming in now. I mean, it's pretty much growing at an exponential rate. So these big data services are going to become massive. As you have to search through bigger and bigger databases, you're going to need more and more efficient parallel processing to do it, right?
Yes, indeed. It's amazing. It's amazing. And I think I was telling you before the show, I'm not going to get into it. The story of the evolution of Databricks and the founder is fascinating. I'm thinking about it now. I think it's an Andreessen Horowitz interview. It's like one of their VC level podcasts where they talk to the founder of Databricks, and he talks about his, escaping a country, going to the Scandinavia, ending up in America, and just an awesome attitude towards entrepreneurial and opportunistic behavior that created all this. So it's a zero to hero story. If you can find it, look into the guy who founded it. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think he ended up going to Sweden. The CEO is Iranian Swede.
Right. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, went to school in Sweden and then went from there. He's done a lot in his life. So it's a cool wiki to read. All right.
All right.
On to the last thing of the show, the biggest thing of the show. Steve, are you ready?
Ready.
Does everybody know what time it is?
Okay. For the
All right,
tool
quick.
time today.
Tool time today. We're doing Kubescape. And so this came out like August.
Yeah.
That's not that long ago, right? Kubernetes hardening guidance. And it was, national security report. And when I first came out, and I was like, I wanted to be skeptical. It is a bit of a read, but not to be dismayed. There's a lot of examples, so that's really quite cool.
It's well done. I wouldn't say so. I took a quick skim of everything and all of the rules and stuff like that. It's an amalgamation of all of the different security guides that you would see at things like Aqua and StackRox and Red Hat and all these different companies that have it. It's very succinct. You can tell that they've brought it together in a very readable way, I think. But I don't think there's anything here that you would go, oh, if you're in security and you've been around Kubernetes, nothing here jumps out at you like this is groundbreaking. It's just their guideline for how to do it. So anyways.
Yeah, fair point. Well put together, and it's a way for an American organization to enforce good practice, right? By saying we're the NSA now you have to do it. Forget CIS benchmarks. So this company, Armo, who previously I had never heard of, created this thing called Kubescape, rocketing up in the stars, the first open source tool for testing if Kubernetes is deployed securely as defined by the Kubernetes hardening by NSA and CISA. And like the first open source, it just came out in August. I mean, I don't doubt it.
It was almost like it was released at the same time, like that it was coming, or
it does make you think like, how does it have 3,000 stars? A tool that couldn't have existed before the guideline. I don't know. But anyway, nevertheless, I wanted to try it. So I did exactly that. I blindly copied this installer like a good security person, and I ran it, but I'm going to do it again. So and the installer actually, I love clever installers. I'm always dubious if someone says, hey, here's a website that will make you secure. Just curl this script and run it. It's like a total, what's it? We haven't done the bingo anti-pattern, right? Don't tell security people to get the security tool by running a script. I mean, it's remote code execution, a success achieved.
Yeah.
So I'm a moron. I looked at it, I ran it, and I now have Kubescape installed on my Mac, which probably half a dozen other forms of spyware. But it's pretty straightforward. Like they don't really download you can do a lot of the steps manually, but you don't really have to bother. You just say Kubescape scan, and I've already kind of got it here because I'm not going to take any risks. This made me laugh. It's future proof. So it says Kubescape scan framework. I got it to print out the frameworks available, of which there's one. It's NSA. So there's nothing else you can put after that that's going to do anything. So that's all you can do. It didn't explain. I was a little critical of the instructions because it doesn't actually explain what's it scanning. Because KubeBench, it actually wants to run on the master node and actually has settings to say, where am I? Am I on the master? Am I on a worker? What's my context? And it also has a way of trying to figure it out itself.
Yep.
Whereas this is checking remotely. It's using kubeconfig. Because but it didn't tell me that. I just assumed that it was going to use kubeconfig.
Yeah, if it's running on your local, if it's an executable on your local host, your PC, that's what's gonna happen, right?
Well, but even like when you look at the instructions, it just says, do this and run it. But I guess because of prior experience with other tools, it's like not all tools just use the kubeconfig. Some want to run. So I didn't know. I just made an assumption. I think they could document it a little bit better. So I am running. Let's be clear about this from last a few weeks back. Let's see if my my VPN hasn't kicked back in. So this is the Civo environment where I've got NVIDIA installed. I got my OpenFast. I got Falco. I got SockShop in there.
2 sock shops.
Plenty to be. Do I? Oh, I do. Or is it just split up?
I think it's just split up. Maybe
It's just split up.
Yeah.
It's listing in a really weird way. Yeah. And I've actually ran Kubebench somewhere in there. So I've got the open.
It's in the default namespace there.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. So I ran Kubebench just to see what it would report before we got here, rather than take risks. So running that, it's going to, and I mean, I've got the proper kubeconfig, so I have admin. So this is basically letting it do whatever it wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
It downloads the framework definition,
pulls all the objects,
and then boom, it's done. It's fast, right?
Yeah.
And I
miracle of JSON.
That. Yeah, look at all that. Not a lot bad. A lot failed. All resources, container host port. So you can go up and we can take a look at some of them.
Yeah, so resource policies is going to be a big one, because one of the biggest things that I see on anything that gets downloaded open source into a cluster is they don't want to put resource limits and requests because they want it to work and they don't want to crowd out your nodes, right? So memory and CPU limits, they're probably going to be almost non-existent on a lot of your resources.
With the exception of the ones I made.
Yeah, the ones you made, or the Kubernetes default daemon sets, things like that.
There you go. Percent success. That's actually pretty cool.
Yep,
20% actually passed. I have no root containers. I was pleased to see. And secure capabilities. It's not a lot of checks. Like if you compare it with anything, pick your tool. This has probably the least amount of actual 20, I think it is, maybe 20 checks. Yeah, 20, it says there. But pretty thorough, actually.
Your ingress and egress resources are a little rough. You probably should throw in some network policies, eh?
I have no network policies. Yeah, that failed everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah, I could just whack a default deny in there and a set of those, and I would solve that problem.
Now,
although no one would be able to
communicate. Can you export these resources in some sort of way from the CLI? It would be pretty cool if this could be exported into just like a XML or.
Yeah. Oh, I mean the results.
Yeah, is that possible with the CLI?
You can actually, yeah, you can. There was JSON, and I think I also saw it does like JUnit XML.
Okay.
So that, because most like AWS just grabs that and makes it pretty, right?
Yeah.
So
that's
it does.
Awesome.
Yeah, it does the right formats that you would want for machine consumability or visibility by known cloud standards. So I was pretty happy with that. And I got to tell you, I'm loving these.
Yeah, those are the big ones. I mean, minus you had 2 that failed. Yeah, Falco obviously needs full permission for privilege, and Kube System.
A security tool. Like this is the ones you knew was going to fail.
Yeah.
It's
interesting that it picked up the Civo one too. It picked up the storage interface. Supplied. The Civo storage, I think it's container storage interface node is what that daemon set stands for.
So you can exclude namespaces. So I could have excluded Kube System.
Yeah.
I didn't do that, but that's a command line parameter.
Cool.
And I think they probably even give you that as a suggestion, which I didn't do somewhere in the instructions.
Can you point this at YAMLs just in a repository, or does this have to be the Kubernetes API?
I can do that.
Oh, that's awesome. Because now it's part of a pipeline, right?
Now it's part of a pipeline, and it uses the destination context. So you see, I still failed.
Yeah, no network policy.
I passed everything, which is great because this is the one I used in my experiment to pass everything. But it knows it's going somewhere that has no network policy.
Right. Smart. That's
Because
awesome.
that was pretty cool, right? I did. I played with not having a kube config to see if it would work or not, and I also played with like doing that, and it says no workloads. So it's looking through the YAML, like it doesn't really fail nest sloppily. Makes sense.
Yeah, empty list of workloads, no workloads found. Yeah. I wonder what
Yeah.
the engine in the background is. I have a feeling it's OBA.
It is.
Yeah. Because basically what they've done is
Yeah.
they've just grouped a bunch of policies under a specific thing or under just in the CLI. It's probably like Viper, like all your Go CLI command lines, and then OPA in the background that's running and a nice little output. Yeah. Uses a Docker build for the CLI build. Yeah, there it is. Cobra and Viper for CLI flags. Nice. Solid tool.
It is. And what's amazing is just everything's so new.
Yeah, they're still updating it like that.
Yeah.
They're the Go report A+. Nice.
It is pretty impressive that what they've made here. And then so this is where there you go.
Yeah.
You can that's where they've given you the example to exclude namespaces, which I then promptly ignored and because I wanted to see everything. But yeah, it is for a first release of an open source tool. There's the JUnit. It's amazing. And it's got Helm support, offline support.
Helm support, so you can run it in your cluster. I mean, because really you're just containerizing a CLI, an executable, right? So you could technically run that in a container in a pipeliner in your cluster as like a job or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what like we deploy Chekhov as a job, or as a cron job that runs in the cluster, but it's similar. Yeah, it's couldn't fault it. I just think like I kind of look forward, like I see it's been powered by that, right? But
wait, what does it say? Powered by OPA.
Well, it's by OPA, and it's driven by this, but it'd be interesting to see like as a contender in the infrastructure as code space. It was pretty advanced out of the box. Like I really respect tools that do like very little, but they didn't rush it. It's like
do one thing really well. Yeah.
Really well. Yeah. It was
it's really hard to do one thing extremely well instead of trying to bite off everything. Looks like they nailed all the functionality that you need out of the box. You got a report, build it into your pipeline. I mean, if you're a small team running on open source, this is something that you could just, hey, let's run this report against our dev cluster. And we're going to go and fix half of these in 2 weeks and then the other half in a month, right? Like it's a really useful tool to do like without having to spend a ton of money or get into calls with some big security tool that's out there. So totally. Are we going into KubeBench?
Well, I just wanted to quickly because KubeBench is there. KubeBench, the way to run KubeBench is super easy. You can run it. You can download a pre-built executable, run on the node, or you can run it as a job, and the job.yaml is in the GitHub repo. You just clone it, deploy the apply-f job.yaml, and then wait. And it takes like about as long as that took. And then you get your warnings, checks, fails. It gives you create a PSP. It gives you suggestions, which actually that didn't do. Like giving help and smart information is probably something the other one could add. But this is just straight up CIS benchmark. So it's got more checks. But
yeah, the nice thing about the new CLI of Kubescape is you have the guideline that you can just go pick up and read. It's like, hey, you need to have ingress and egress block. It's like there is a whole hardened guideline right there for you. I mean, I get it. You want to read on the command line, but it's like use those in tandem and you'll be fine.
Yeah. So yeah, thumbs up to Kubescape.
Yeah, awesome demo. That's pretty sweet. And that was very easy to set up and get going with it. So nice job.
Yeah, sweet. All right. We're over an hour.
Yeah, that's all we have for the week. What do we got next week, Steve?
You're gonna do the thing we teased people with,
Yeah, that's right. The calculator, the cost calculator.
the freaky calculator you sent to me, and I was like, what?
Yeah,
Not straightforward.
that would be a good one. I think that would be kind of short. That'd be like 5-10 minutes. So I was thinking maybe we look at Rancher 2.6.
That could be a whole show.
That could be a whole show.
Could be a whole show. All right, well, I'll let you decide. It's your turn.
But yeah, so this is your Cloud Native newsletter. So check us out next week. We'll be looking at the cost calculator and maybe some other things.
Maybe. And please tell your friends, share this show, like, subscribe, follow us on Twitch, share the love. Thank you very much.
As always, I'm Mike Foster.
I'm Steve Jaguar.
Have a good one.
See you next week.